definitions within the Fair Housing Act, because they also don't specifically set forth that LGBT is protected, but what they do is they take folks that fall in that group and use other elements of the act to protect them. For instance, if there's a discrimination claim because someone's afraid that a man with AIDS will infect his neighbors, well, you can do that because there's a disability issue. If there's a claim based upon gender identification, that can fall in a straight sex discrimination claim. So there are some provisions in there, and under programs sponsored by HUD, such as the FHA lending programs, they have specific regulations that prohibit discrimination against LGBT. So there are some protections out there in the housing arena, but in other areas,
there aren't. Okay, and so I'm going to recap what you said at the last council meeting, was that we don't have the authority to impose sanctions or anything greater than what the state allows. So if the state does not currently have protection for LGBTs or any particular group, it is not within our authority to be able to offer that protection with any kind of teeth, with any kind of.
That would appear to be the case under the case law that I would.
So
you'd be able to protect within the confines of what's set forth in the Act, but outside the Act, it would not be competent to be able.
Well, then what we're saying here is stuff that is outside that Act. Some of the things where we're saying that we were going to protect these people and have, they're going to do the expanded responsibility or expanded procedures. That's saying that we're going to have hearings, take evidence, take arguments, and make a determination when isn't that outside the realm of our authority?
I think the question would be once you go to impose sanctions of some sort, and that's appealed, whether the court would recognize that authority. As it stands, it's not appearing to have the ability to exceed the ability of the Commonwealth to force provisions regarding certain categories.
So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but this is outside our authority, our ability to protect these people. All right, thank you very much for answering that. I think that's something council needs to look at very seriously, because if we're going to be adopting an ordinance where we are acting outside our authority, I don't think that's wise. It's sort of sending a message. Now, other issues in the
Councilor, I just want to clarify too that under the less than expanded powers, it would not be a claim for that. The issue only arises at the enforcement phase when you go to impose sanctions. So under the less than expanded pieces of the ordinance, that would not be an issue. It's just that it could be raised in defense if the expanded powers are given and there's an enforcement process for sanctions.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think because there's never any harm in trying to talk and work things out with people. But so I guess I'll kind of amend what I was saying. This goes along with what Councilor Lupo was saying at the last meeting, that the expanded procedures, if we just stop it there, then I don't think there's any benefit with this ordinance. But to add in the expanded procedures is something we don't even have the authority to do. So I understand you're saying it's sending a message, but what message is it sending? What message is it sending? It's sending a message saying we're giving them false hope. We're going to try to do something that we can't. It's going to be challenging for it. It might be overturned in the end anyways. We have to spend a lot of money points for it. I mean, I think it's a very poor message. What we did talk about the last time, sending a letter to Senator Dinniman and Becky Corbin. I spoke with Becky Corbin's office, and there is already a House bill and a Senate bill in the works. It's a House Bill 300, Senate Bill 300, that does include, is to change the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act itself to include those of different sexual orientation. It's sitting in the state government committee, I believe, right now. So that legislation is already on its way. We would be wise to not do this yet. It is premature. Even if you just stop it there at the, where the expanded procedures, stop it, and wait for that legislation to be passed. And then we can make a really big deal, a really positive deal out of adopting that and those, the expanded procedures. Okay, the other thing I have though, is under the fact-finding conference, it says the facts are not, nothing is recorded.
And what page is that?
Well, that's page 6 of 10, page 6. C, section C. Okay. And it's just in general, it talks about the fact-finding conference that it's not going to be recorded. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because if you look in paragraph D, it says that if the complaint is not resolved through the fact-finding conference, then the commission shall, at a second meeting following the fact-finding conference, consider the findings. Now, if you haven't recorded the meeting, how are you gonna be able to refer back to it for the second meeting? You know?
It's saying accepting the findings of fact detailed in subsection C3 of this section.
Where are you?
C2, the fact-finding conference will not be, it's the last sentence, a fact-finding conference will not be a public event, and no record of the conference will be created accepting the findings of fact detailed in subsection C3 of this section.
C3.
Does that mean there's still facts if it's not recorded? So there's still facts, you can take notes, you can do whatever.
I didn't see that sentence, so, thank you. Okay, so the facts are recorded, that's really important. Okay, and then the other part that I had is under, it's actually under the, where it has the religious exemption, where is that?
It's right, I think it's right at the beginning.
Where is it? Yeah, here it is, under D, page 3, 90-5 exceptions, under D.
What number?
D, 90-5 D exceptions. It's saying that exceptions are religious organizations, denominations that are exempt as 501c3s in the IRS code. That, and this would be actually a question for you, Tony, about that, because I don't believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that a religious organization has to be a 501c3 under the tax code in order to be accepted out of this.
I honestly don't know the answer whether or not they have to have that status or not, whether you have to file tax filings regarding the tax status, but I don't know if that's what they have to
Or any nonprofit. What about any nonprofit that is private? Do they have to be a 501c3 in order to be exempt? Let's say you have a startup church or any kind of a religious group.
And that would refer because I'm not vaccinated.
Then I think that we need to look into that, because when I looked up the nonprofit law, the Pennsylvania nonprofit law, it seemed to me that you cannot discriminate against nonprofit or not, you can't, what's the right way to say this? They're not held to that. If they're a religious nonprofit, they are exempt. And it doesn't matter whether they're whether under the IRS code says they're a 501c3 or not, they are still a nonprofit in the state of Pennsylvania.
Is that how you interpret it, or is that your legal opinion?
That's what I read, and then
I'm just saying, you're giving an opinion. Is this just merely your opinion, or you're stating the facts? You're giving a legal opinion? A lot of times
I'm not a lawyer, I can't give a legal opinion.
Then you're giving your interpretation of what you're reading.
I tell you about the Pennsylvania nonprofit code. As far as
It does say, and I'm just reading this back, so it says, is exempt from federal taxation under the IRS code or any other, so you don't have to be a 501c3.
I know, but read it. It says, or any organization
Yeah, not
affiliated
and.
with that
Or.
religious organization. So it's saying any organization is affiliated with that 501c3 organization. It's saying you can be the 501c3, that's exempt, or if they have like a smaller nonprofit, that you're affiliated with that 501c3. So it does require an affiliation with a 501c3 or a 501c3 status of the organization itself.
I
Yeah,
disagree.
I'm not reading it that way.
I don't read it that
I've
way.
seen a lot of ors.
It says it right there.
It says or religious organizations or denominations that is exempt from federal. So it includes religious organizations, religious denominations, or associations of religious organizations, or denominations. There's no ands.
And that's your interpretation, I mean, we can interpret how we want, we can
Right.
interpret, I mean, it's
Right,
not, it's in the
right, but
court,
I'm
so
not
if you
looking
interpret
at
it that
it.
way, and that's fine.
You don't
Anything
have to be
else?
501c3.
Anything else you want to bring us, there's a lot of different.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Miracle of modern technology, I just looked up 501c3, and basically it just identifies tax exempt organizations. I don't know that it requires any type of registration, but it does identify, and that would include all, include churches that qualify as tax exempt or charitable organizations.
What if they're not a 501c3? What if
Well-
they're just a nonprofit in the state of
Well, there wouldn't be a
Pennsylvania?
nonprofit, there wouldn't be a nonprofit, they're identifying as a nonprofit for tax purposes under the IRS.
Wait, you have two different, you have Pennsylvania nonprofit. You can be a nonprofit in Pennsylvania without being a 501c3 with the IRS.
The 501c3 provides for the exemption, doesn't necessarily mean your
Exactly.
the certification of the 501c3, but that allows a charitable organization to be exempt, doesn't necessarily mean you have to have registration.
The 501c3 allows a charitable organization to accept donations and that kind of thing, and so the person can write off their donations. But you can still be a nonprofit in the state of Pennsylvania without having to be a 501c3. The 501c3 is just an IRS designation of that nonprofit. There are two separate things. Pennsylvania nonprofit, which is your corporate structure, your corporate designation, and then your 501c3, which is an IRS tax designation. Two separate things. One has to do with money, and one has to do with your corporate structure.
It's the point of the tax, there's money, you're tax exempt.
That's the only way, so if you're not tax exempt, if you're a nonprofit,
Now, if
you're not tax exempt, then,
if you're a tax exempt religious organization,
Right.
great. So if you're a religious organization that's not tax exempt,
one of them is
I actually do,
a for-profit,
they're nonprofit religious organizations that are not 501c3s. They're a nonprofit, they're religious, but they're not a 501c3.
501c3 provides an exemption, I don't necessarily believe it requires you to be filed as a 501c3, it's an exemption for charitable organizations.
And also, this includes all religious organizations. All right, so if they're a religious nonprofit, even if they aren't a 501c3, they're still exempt from this ordinance.
And guys, everybody's interpreting it differently, we're trying to get a legal thing, you look at it one way, the rest of them are reading
Well,
it
maybe
another.
then
So-
maybe it should be tightened up then. If it is that open to interpretation, then maybe the wording should be tightened up so that it's not open to interpretation. It's very clear that whether you're a 501c3 or not, as long as you're a religious nonprofit organization, regardless of 501c3 or not, that you're still covered. And maybe it should also be tightened up as far as the private clubs and stuff, for those 501c3s.
Julie, do you have any other recommendations? Or questions?
Yeah, change it. If you want me to come up with a sentence, I could come up with a sentence for you
Okay, Nick, you
before
have
we go
anything?
vote.
I do, I just have it's a generic question, so
Sure, go
obviously,
ahead.
I read through this, but I don't know if it's Alex or Josh obviously seems to know a lot about this, or if it's Amy/Tony. But,
Thank you.
so if you could, I'm just trying to figure out, so if I had, or somebody had an issue, and this passes, they have to go to the commission, and it's, let's say, it's two path question. One is for those that are already covered, I guess, from other organizations, be it Pennsylvania Human Relations, the EOC, whoever else, and those that may not. So if you are covered, what's the process from start to end? Generically, I don't even know if you necessarily put the name and then maybe go and do the fact that like someone would submit a claim to the commission. The commission has a hearing.
It would actually simultaneously be filed with the state.
Are you talking about the state's action or the?
Ours, this actual
The
one.
first, well, there's two processes, the initial process that we've been talking about the meet, and the fact finding, you try to work it out, if that doesn't work out, then there's no expanded powers, then the commission's gonna vote on the fact finding, and if not, then it's gonna, then that'll be, could be dismissed at that point, but it could be a finding probable cause. It was an unlawful practice. And then it was stopped, there's no extended power. If there's expanded powers, then the commission has a hearing, with conciliation, try to work it out, we'll find probable cause. If they can at that point, they'll try to eliminate the cause of the problem. There'll then be a public hearing. The respondent will have to file an answer. It's going to be conducted by 2 to 3 members. Then it'll be a finding, either dismiss or find a violation. If they find a violation, the violation is cease and desist order. And they have the other remedies available then with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission has, which is civil penalties and injunctions. Or they could find a issue. Those would be two things it would do. It also allows, it also makes known or advises the complainant they have the right to go to court and seek civil remedies themselves.
So if they find fault for someone or and someone is assessed a penalty of some sort.
They have penalties of back pay.
Right. So what all right, so our commission issues the back penalty or says that they need to do back pay or whatever. Then the issue I think you were about to say simultaneously is going through the Pennsylvania Human Relations. And they issue the same thing. So the person's only paying one back pay, right? Not 2 back pays. Is that, that's fair? Like, so we're simultaneously doing the same thing redundantly for that specific circumstance. For the ones that are covered with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. So we come to the same fact finding.
If you reach the same conclusion and enforce the same remedies, yes.
So the same recourse is available, and again, correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you just said. It's happening simultaneous regardless, right? So if someone wants to have recourse and they are covered, they go through simultaneously. They're going through our local commission. It's also going through the Pennsylvania Human Relations.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that when we go through here and this commit, the Downingtown Commission will advise the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission of its action. I don't think the Human Relations Commission, the Human Relations Commission Act, that they would be on a parallel track. I think it would have to
Start here. Okay. So then in that case, which if that were the case, so if I'm assessed a penalty, could you just ignore it then until you go to the Pennsylvania Human Relations then? Because
what you would probably have to do is seek enforcement in court of common pleas if the person does not respond.
okay, so the recourse is still ultimately the end of the line in that case is the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission regardless. If it starts here or not, it winds up most likely if somebody wants to fight an issue, it's going to wind up at the Pennsylvania Human Relations.
It could end up in the court system.
Or court of common pleas. But it's not, Downingtown's not the place that, and really, other than the start of it happens.
Well, you would have to get through if you have expanded powers, you go into the enforcement process, you could have enforcement proceedings, you could direct the activity stop, the discriminatory activity stop, or you can impose certain sanctions as set forth in the PHRA and the ordinance. So you would have some rights and some enforcement proceedings there. Now, the question is if you fight or appeal, then you enforce.
Okay, and if we didn't have the commission, all of those protections are still available to them in the things that are existing today, the court system or the Pennsylvania Human Relations. Okay, so that was the first round of question. That everything already exists today. We're at the best that we're doing for that specific set of circumstances is just adding another layer at the local level to do it ourselves.
Well, they would be able to get redress locally as opposed to going to.
And then going up. Okay, so we're adding just one more step at a lower step for them to start. So then the next question, which I guess is where I guess this ordinance tries to pick up the slack of human relations, is for like LGBT community who doesn't have any of those enforcement rights at the Pennsylvania Human Relations. Do they have any recourse at the court systems right now for anything?
Not really, no.
Okay, so if we find, then let's play that trail. I just want to make sure I follow. So if someone finds some issue with LGBT which is not covered anywhere else, so we address it here, The furthest it goes is here.
I think you'd be able to impose a sanction, you could impose a sanction. Using your police powers to pass this ordinance. So you have some ability to enforce as far as taking the steps to go through the process. The question is if someone challenges your ability to do that, and that's going to be a court decision whether or not you have the authority because it's in excess of what the Human Relations Commission has at this time. The only cases I've seen on it, right now they're saying you can't exercise powers beyond that which the state commission has.
So then you answer the question, and I'll stop here. I just want to rehash and make sure I understand. If there is recourse currently, we're just adding a lower step, an extra step. But ultimately, if someone wants to follow it, it's going to go through the chain that already exists that they could take advantage of today anyway. If it's something LGBT related, we can talk about it and maybe we can put some kind of sanction. But ultimately, if that gets challenged, it was kind of, there was nothing we can enforce from beyond it. That's it. Once it gets challenged, we're going to lose regardless.
Well, my estimate would be that you would not be able to enforce it if you went to the courts, but you never know whether the courts are going to change their position at some point in the future, though. The courts often change the time, so it's hard to predict how a court would rule at some point in the future. Right now, as the law stands, you could not exercise power beyond that which the state can.
And that was the ruling with Downingtown?
The city of Downingtown.
It was the Hartman case?
And the Hartman case, the one that you sent to me was that you have the authority, to pass the ordinance, but didn't specifically address the authority to enforce. The city of Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations versus Police is the one where they said that the powers do not, the local powers do not extend to the local commission powers or duties above and beyond those of the Texas Human Rights Commission. So the one, Allentown Center practice, you can pass it, but it didn't address the second issue, which is raising the police now, but with the extent of it.
Which case is that? Versus?
City of Pittsburgh, Human Relations Commission, the police, 782, 82nd, 586.
And Tony,
Thanks.
the way Nick explained it, Nick, that's exactly the way like this. It's exactly, the police get a ticket. Okay, it's the same thing, they get a ticket. If the people don't pay the ticket, then it goes to the next level and goes to court. So it could eventually go to legal. That's the way the system works. There's a chain of command that you go up. We're not saying the way I interpret it, we can't fix this, but in any way, shape, or form that we can help people keep this from happening, it's a benefit. So we're not getting in there, excuse me, we're not saying that I could see you're saying we can't do this, we can't do that. But go back to the way the police, go back to the way the codes office does it. The government, that's a lot of us we already have things in here. The code officer doesn't go to your house, yank you out and say, look, fix that. No, they go to the next level. The next level enforces it. Then they can get legal representation, sometimes we do. It seems like that's the normal chain of command, the way democracy works. You go, you do it, and that's the way it happens.
I would just like to comment on,
I appreciate your comment, saying, well, we would like to
And that's
help
just
people.
my comment.
No, no, no,
Don't, you don't have to put down your pipe and smoke it if you don't want.
No, no,
That's
because
just how I'm
agree.
interpreting it.
And that's fine, I guess there's lots of places where we can interpret things.
Sure, you interpret it, and interpret legal stuff, everybody.
But no, I'm not interpreting legal, I'm interpreting what your words just said. You said, well, I think we should all help, and I think every one of us has said, from last meeting to this meeting, we want to help. I think the disagreement keeps coming in and creating something that's unenforceable. Or if you want to create something that's help, okay, I agree. I don't, sound from her comments, a committee, a mediation group, whatever. This commission, which gives police powers and all this stuff, which doesn't have, at the end of the day, can't enforce it anyway. Why go through all of that when we can still have all of the language, all of the anti-discrimination, all of the statement they're making, and have services to help them through a mediation or a committee? We can still have all of that. So why? I just go back to why is this the only option? What makes this option? Because other places have done it. We copied, more or less word for word what they had, and just put our Downingtown words in it, but ultimately we just copy this. Why is it the only option? There are other options out there to get it and show unanimous support.
It's just like why we can get the state police, why have local police review the state police? I think we're
Are you
being,
presenting we get rid of the?
I think we're being redundant, guys, and we're beating it over, unless there's something new that we want to add. I don't- Yeah, we're hashing the same thing, we hashed it last week, we're hashing it this week. If you guys have something new, fine, add it, if not, we're gonna move on and take it out.
No, I do, I do.
So about something new, go right ahead.
Yeah, one is, first of all, I will say, since you brought up the police can give tickets, but, so I don't think the comparison is.
Force, I didn't say give them, it's force. They can give tickets,
Right,
but they can't collect
exactly.
it.
And we have volunteers who can't enforce this. So we can give a ticket and say you are discriminating, but we can't enforce it, police can. So I think there is a very big distinction, to compare the two is not valid, and
In your
that's kind
opinion,
of
it's
the
not
point.
valid.
That's not, I interpret it differently, go ahead.
Well, at this point.
Anything else, Ann?
Yeah, the fact finding, and I want to kind of build up on what Nick had said, three things. The fact finding, we're doing the fact finding, we've been talking about it, we're working it out and that kind of stuff. Are they going to be mediating? Like, let's say it stopped and we didn't do the extended procedures, all right? And when nobody ever approved it or whatever. Where do they stop? You do the fact finding, and then what are the volunteers, are they going to be doing with this information? Are they just getting the facts and then saying this is the way we see it? Or do they, it looks to me like they try to help both parties work it out, they're trying to do some mediation, some remedy of the issue? Is that, Sarah Brown brought that up, and that's a good question. Can you tell me what happens once they do the fact finding? Are they,
So the ordinance it's allowing mediation. It's not preventing mediation, it's allowing mediation.
is that a responsibility of them? Or can the commission say, yeah, we don't want to get involved in this when you're on your own? Or, is it a response?
Well, obviously.
What can the person expect from the commission? Let's say we don't go to the expanded procedures, what can that person expect in the level of responsiveness from the commission?
I think, sorry, go ahead.
I don't
If you want
care
to
who
answer, go
answers
ahead.
that
I'm
one.
gonna say something.
By level of responsiveness, what do you mean?
How much involvement can they expect from the commission? And let's say you get both parties there, but there's still some dissension. He said, she said, you got the facts and everything like that. How much does the commission work to bring the parties together, come to a, is their main purpose to get facts and come to their own conclusion, or is their main purpose to try to help the two parties communicate and educate and work it out?
I think that's a commission level question. You have an ordinance that provides lots of different avenues to sort out an issue if someone feels discriminated against. So they can, and I think Nick's question before was very well put, and that right now LGBT members of the downtown community, the hundreds that exist, do not have an avenue on the state level to be heard if they feel discriminated against either the annual level or their employment. So if all this ordinance does is give them an opportunity to speak to people in the local community that they know care about their issue, and they get an opportunity, and that commission goes and collects facts and investigates it, and they make a point that the downtown community does not allow this for our neighbors, then I think this is 100% something that, as Nick put, we should all get behind, even if that's just as far as it went. And hopefully the state acts and allows us to enforce this at some point. And if that's the case, then it's already in the ordinance.
So do you support then my suggestion of not going through a commission and having a committee that has the ability just to hear issues and try to help resolve them?
No, I 100%
You
disagree.
just kind of said that.
No, I 100% disagree with that because you think, and I made this point last time, and it's just
What
to
did
get
you say?
No, I said if that's all it did, so if that's all it did, I think it's worth passing unanimously. However, we disagree on that. You think this should be watered down, and I think it's not strong enough.
Guys, anything now, if not,
Yeah.
if you have something to do, then we'll
I
take
do,
it.
I
Go
do.
ahead.
The other, now, I have another scenario that I want to ask about. This is, speaking, Karen, right, who spoke about that mom. What can this do to help her or her child? Let's say the child goes to school and there are issues there. Can she come to the commission